Hi, I'm USA Today bestselling author Jennifer Youngblood. Thanks for joining me for One Chapter a Day, The Clean Romance Way. Today, I'm going to be reading Chapter 10 of her Crazy Rich Fake Fiancé. Haven and Wyatt found Lillian's treasure. Now Wyatt is going to come clean about who he really is. Will Haven do the same? Chapter 10. Everything was happening so fast that Haven hardly knew what to think. She'd been so consumed with her own situation, fearing what would happen when the news of the treasure reached Bryn, that it took her a second to realize that Wyatt had identified himself with another last name, Charles Wyatt Davenport. She assumed Wyatt's family was wealthy, but seeing the reporter's reactions, she gathered it was more than just wealth, but influence as well. She wasn't sure how to react to the news that Wyatt had withheld his real name. It seemed like such a small thing compared to what she was doing. Still, she had to act a little put out or else he'd get suspicious. Then again, maybe now was a good time to tell Wyatt her true identity. How could he blame her for coming forward with the truth when he was doing the same? They were sitting on a couch, Wyatt angled to face her, taking both of her hands in his. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth about myself," he began. "Why keep it a secret?" He let out a breath. "For most of my life, I've been defined by my dad. I wasn't known as Wyatt, but as Charles Davenport II. I was just supposed to follow blindly in my dad's footsteps." His jaw became rigid. "When my dad deemed me worthy, I was to take over the businesses." His eyes narrowed. "I wanted to live my own plan, to break the mold and become my own person." "You don't want to take over the businesses?" "Yeah, eventually, but right now I want to continue treating patients. I want to build my satellite office in NoHo." His eyes burned with intensity. "I want to be known for me, not my name." "I see, it makes sense." He gave her a hopeful look. "You're not mad?" She laughed. "Well, how can I be mad at you for wanting to be your own man?" A relieved smile moved over his lips. "I'm glad you see it that way." She thought of something he had said. "So your dad wants you to settle down and take over the companies?" "Yes." "And bringing me home for Christmas shows him that you're closer." "Yeah," he said warily. "Why do you care? You don't want his businesses right now." He laughed uneasily. "You make a good point." He released her hands and rubbed his neck. "I guess I'm one of those tormented dummies who cares what his parents think." Haven smiled. "Well, that's not a bad thing. I cared what my dad thought of me." Oh, how she missed her dad. She had to laugh inside, wondering what he would think of the treasure. $450,000 was more money than Haven had seen in her lifetime. She wondered what they would do with the jewelry. Try to sell it, maybe? Haven didn't like wearing a lot of jewelry. A pained look touched Wyatt's handsome face. "The other reason I wanted you to come home with me was knowing it would be easier to deal with Kat if I had you with me." "You mean another girl on your arm?" "Yeah," he admitted. "Things have changed, though." He gave her a meaningful look. "You and I are in a different place now." His words were like a warm blanket she could snuggle into. "Yes." A smile stretched over her lips. Her next thought sent her heart plummeting through her chest. What would happen when Bryn found out about this? Icy fingers pricked at the base of her skull. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Wyatt looked at her with such admiration and tenderness that it caused her insides to melt. "Thank you for understanding." Her heart began to pound like it was trying to push through her rib cage. "Tell him the truth now," her mind screamed. "Wyatt," she began. The word lost air. She sucked in a breath, trying again. "There's something I need to—" His phone rang. He fished it out of his pocket. Haven held her breath waiting. Was it Bryn? How long would it take for the story to break? How often was Bryn checking the news and social media? Even if Bryn didn't see it, Demi might. She'd call Bryn asking about it, then everything would go haywire. "It's my mom," Wyatt said. "I'd better get it. I told her we'd arrive early this afternoon. It's going to be much later now." She forced a smile. "Sure, go ahead." "Hey, Mom. We got a bit of a late start." He chuckled. "It's a strange story. I'll tell you all about it when we get there. Bryn's excited to meet you, too. She's sitting here beside me." He clasped her hand as he spoke. "Yeah, I'm sure the famous designer won't mind giving you a bit of advice." He moved the phone away from his mouth. "Mom wants you to give her advice on her dress for the Christmas Eve party." Okay." Haven's throat tightened as she swallowed. How could she tell Wyatt now? It could ruin his family's Christmas. Sure, he'd withheld his last name, but pretending to be a completely different person was something else altogether. Even though Haven had only been with Wyatt for a couple of days, her world was rich and brilliant with him by her side. She loved his confidence, personality, kindness, and consideration. Haven didn't want to lose him. "All right, I love you too. See you soon." He released her hand and pushed the phone back into his pocket. "Aubrey and her family just arrived. Ellie will get there an hour before us. This is going to be the best Christmas ever," he beamed. He reached for her hand and kissed it. Then he laughed as he let go of her hand and examined his own. "Sorry, I forgot to wash my hands." She looked down. "Me too." Mixed feelings warred inside her. She was looking forward to meeting Wyatt's family. More than anything, she craved being a part of a family for Christmas. Yet Haven wanted his family to know the real her, a no-frills elementary school teacher, not the famous clothing designer. Interesting how she'd always wondered what it would be like to be Bryn. Now that she knew, she longed to be herself. Wyatt stood and looked out the window. "It looks like the posse has dispersed. After we run to the restroom and wash up, we need to get going." "Sounds good." Haven wondered what the next few days would bring, either her salvation or condemnation. At this point, it was hard to say which direction the pendulum would swing. Haven looked, then looked again, her jaw dropping like a cement block. "That's your house?" "My parents' house," Wyatt corrected with a tight smile. "That's not a house, it's a city. The crown jewel of Buckhead," she added under her breath. The Georgian-style mansion was in a prominent, secluded area of Buckhead. Any area of Buckhead was ghastly expensive, but this? Haven swallowed. This was the pinnacle of Buckhead. The sprawling mansion curved gracefully towards the street in a slight C, like it was embracing the sculpted landscape, which looked like a botanical garden. The grand wide staircase in the front center flanged outward on both sides at the bottom, giving way to a spectacular fountain. With a layer of frost and snow, the mansion shimmered like a fairy tale castle. No wonder the reporters had been taken back when they realized who Wyatt was. A cold sweat broke over Haven, her hands going clammy. This is not what she had in mind when she pictured Christmas with Wyatt's family. She would stick out like a sore thumb amidst such grandeur. The Davenports were expecting an influential designer. They were expecting Bryn. She wanted to shrink to the size of a bug and skulk away, forget that she'd ever concocted such a harebrained scheme of pretending to be her sister. Wyatt gave her a concerned look. "You okay?" She forced a rubbery smile, willing herself to hold it together. "Just breathe." He blew out a labored breath. "This is why I don't like telling people who I am," he blustered. "It's too much, even for you." "I'll be okay." She clutched her throat, a hysterical giggle rising. She suppressed it. Wyatt turned down the long driveway leading to the mansion. "I'm the same person you've been with. Nothing has changed, all right?" She nodded. "I'm sorry." She laughed softly. "I knew something was up when the reporters reacted the way they did. I should have realized." Her voice trailed off into silence. Never could she have imagined this. She thought of her own moderate brick home in a middle-class neighborhood. 10 of her homes could fit inside this mansion, maybe more. They pulled around the back to the monster-sized corral of connected garages off to the side. The back of the mansion was even more intimidating than the front. A terrace ran the width of the house, and 2 staircases led down to a circular pool. It had a winter covering over it, but Haven could imagine how spectacular it must be in the summer. Wyatt turned off the engine and looked at her. "Are you okay?" He gathered her hands in his. "Your hands are ice cold." He searched her face. "Don't let this get to you." "I'm sorry. I know I'm overreacting. It's just..." Her throat grew thick as she tried to collect her thoughts. "I don't know how to act around your family." He laughed. "Well, be yourself. They're just people. You'll see." "I feel like we just stepped into the movie Crazy Rich Asians." A wry grin tugged at her lips. "Only I'm not handling it as well as the heroine did in the movie." "Well, I haven't seen the movie." "Well, you should. It's very similar to our situation. A guy brings his Asian American girlfriend home to Singapore to meet his family. She discovers they're mega rich." He quirked a grin. "What happens in the end?" Heat rose in her cheeks. "Huh?" Crap, she'd set herself up for this one. His eyes sparkled with amusement, turning them such a startling crystal blue that it nearly took her breath away. "The family views her as a threat." A shadow crossed his features, his jaw tensing. "That's not likely to happen here." "Not likely?" A shiver ran down her spine. Wyatt couldn't guarantee that, no matter how much he wanted to. What else happened? He prompted, his voice gentle. The couple works through their differences. She figured her face was blazing like a sunburn. At the end, the guy goes after the girl and proposes. A pleased smile came over Wyatt's lips. See, he drawled, a happy ending. There you go. She was relieved he didn't think she was trying to get him to propose. Her heart fluttered with unbidden hope at the thought. She was losing it. She and Wyatt had a long, tough road to hoe before getting to that point. Heck, they weren't likely to reach that point ever. Once Wyatt discovered the truth, he'd probably drop her like a hot potato. Why then was she getting so worked up about meeting his family? Perhaps she didn't want to break the spell they'd been under. No matter what, it's me and you, Wyatt said, a fierce look in his eyes. You got that? Yes, she uttered, hoping he'd still feel the same when the truth came out. Okay, I can totally understand why Wyatt wants to be known by his own merit rather than his father's accomplishments. That would be tough to be able to fill those big shoes. Haven is totally overwhelmed by the Davenport's mansion, which is understandable. Will Wyatt's family treat her well? Will she be able to measure up to their expectations? Join me tomorrow as I read the next chapter. Here's to keeping it sweet and swoony. See y'all tomorrow.